Hello everyone, welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. This will be the continuation of Burn Your Wings. This will be Part 19, Chapter 19, entitled, We'll Be Alright. Being used to something is a frightening thing. Izuku and Inko had been used to Hisashi, too used to violence and pain, too used to fear and despair that they never tried to run away. They never tried to change Hisashi. They never dared to even think that they could go against him. It was doubly true for Izuku. He hadn't had a choice to begin with. He was just born into it. He hadn't known it was even wrong until much, much later. Parents are absolute figures to a young child, after all, and no matter what, Hisashi was and still is Izuku's father. Izuku was too used to Hisashi's violence, too used to his mother's sobs, that he never thought there could be another way. So no, unlike Eri, Izuku himself has never tried to run away. He's never even thought of it as a possibility, but as someone who has also been subject to abuse, as someone who has learned the world was cruel before daring to hope it could be kind, as someone who has also known pain and despair and resignation, at far too young an age, he can guess just how hard it must have been for her to try to escape, how scared Eri must have been, how much courage it must have taken, how desperate she must have been for her to reach out and cling to a total stranger like him. And despite all that, when Chizaki threatened Izuku, she stepped between them. Despite all the courage she must have scrounged up to escape, despite the punishment that might be awaiting her, she still chose to return. She chose to protect Izuku. When Izuku first stepped between his parents and took the beating for Inko, his mother had cried. "I'm so sorry," she had sobbed. "I'm so, so sorry." Even Todoroki had half commented and half begged, after the stain incident, "Don't do that. Don't push me away, or put yourself in harm for me. Don't do that." After talking about the difference between protecting and saving people with all might, and the need to save yourself, too, with the Eraserhead, Izuku thought he knew what they were talking about. But Izuku realizes that only now does he truly understand. He understands. Izuku watches with horror, choking his throat and guilt burning his stomach as Eri leaves his arms and returns to Chizaki, to her abuser. He unconsciously reaches out after her, but Toga grabs him and anchors Izuku down, frantically shaking his head, silently begging him to stop. But Izuku can't. "Eri." The girl pauses just before she reaches Chizaki. She turns her head to look back at Izuku, and he finds something far too familiar in her empty eyes. Resignation. "Oh no." "You don't have to," Izuku tells her, despite Toga's best efforts to get him to get over this encounter as quickly and quietly as possible. He understands the senior, he really does, but he also understands Eri. He needs to tell her this. "You don't have to stay. You can leave." It's something Izuku himself had never learned, but desperately wanted Eri to believe right now. Eri looks back at him with wide eyes, but before she can make a decision, Chizaki positions himself so that his body hides Eri and Izuku from each other's sight. "Yes, we'll be doing just that, leaving. Thank you for your concern," he says, still smiling that fake smile behind his mask, and at his voice Eri turns her back again, shoulders drooped, head down, following Chizaki wordlessly. Izuku watches them go, with something like despair curling his gut. "I'm sorry," Toga says as soon as the two are out of earshot. He's still holding Izuku, still restraining him, and the other boy squeezes his hands on Izuku's shoulders as if to emphasize his point. "I'm sorry, Midoriya. I know it must be hard for you to let something like that go, especially with your background, but we need to be cautious. Sir has been hounding the Shie Hassaikai for weeks. We can't just ruin that by getting Chisaki's guard up. At worst, we might just make him hide and lose the chance to save that girl completely." It's only then that Toga tentatively lets Izuku go. "Let's call Sir," he continues. Toga's a good person, after all, and he looks absolutely distraught at the position that he's put in. Having to tell one abuse victim not to help another possible victim must be stressful for him too, but he's trying his best to be level-headed just like he was taught by Sir Nighteye. "We can't move rashly. Let's wait for his orders." There are so many things that he wants to say but Izuku just bites his tongue. Because despite their disagreement, he really does understand Toga's reasoning. Sir Nighteye split their team so that one team would have a pro hero and a sidekick, while the other consisted of only 2 student interns. It's obvious from the unbalanced situation that Sir Nighteye and Bubble Girl were planning to do anything actually involving the villain organization, while Izuku and Toga were only ever supposed to do a light patrol around town. But now that Izuku and Toga had unexpectedly met the leader of the Shie Hisakai, it's only logical from an investigation standpoint to wait for Sir Nightaye's judgment. Izuku understands Toga's reasoning. He really does. It's just that he understands Eri more. It starts raining as Sir Nighteye and Bubble Girl meet up with Toga and Izuku. "I'm sorry, we messed up." Toga speaks up first before Izuku can say anything. Izuku notes the way that the senior firmly says "we," even though it was only Izuku who complicated things, demonstrating that Toga is willing to shoulder the burden together with Izuku, should they be faulted. A wave of appreciation for the senior washes over Izuku even in these circumstances. "To think that we bumped into him like you'd expect to meet a transfer student in some manga." "No, it's my fault," Sir Nighteye objects, and Izuku can feel the way he subtly softens towards Toga. "I could have prevented this if I'd seen you." "At least you guys are all right." Bubble Girl tries to look on the bright side of things. "Only because Eri protected us," Izuku objects quietly. Both adults turn to him as Toga's face falls at the reminder. "Apparently Chizaki has a daughter. He called her Eri, and she had bandages all over her arms and legs. She was terrified. I think she was trying to escape from him, but He isn't sure how to word what happened without it sounding like an accusation to either himself or Toga. "I wish we could have protected her," is what he settles on, and it's woefully lacking. But Sir Nighteye gives him a look at his words. "Don't be so arrogant," he says brusquely. "The world isn't so easy that you can save anyone just because you want to." "No, the world isn't easy. It's not fair either, and it certainly isn't kind." "If you hurry, you'll ruin everything. If you chase him rashly, he'll run off and hide even further. You're not so special that you can save anyone you want to. First, we need to predict what he wants to do, then analyze until we're sure that we're fully prepared." And that's exactly the kind of thing that Izuku wanted to learn here, tactical planning. But he didn't mean for the next words to slip out of his mouth, but he just can't help himself. "But how many tears must Eri spill in the meantime?" And unknown to Izuku, a jolt goes down Night-Eye's spine at those words. When All Might first fought All for One 6 years ago, he'd been so injured in the aftermath that he could barely even walk, and even so he had still tried to go out and save people. "It's no use," Night-Eye had said to All Might. "You must retire." "Haven't you seen the news? The people are calling for me. If they're waiting, I must go." That relentlessness was a part of what made All Might the hero he was, part of why Night-Eye admired him so much, but there's a point where even the best quality becomes a hindrance. It pained Night-Eye to have to say this to the hero, to his hero, but he hardened his heart and he tried his best to be calm and rational. He tried to reason with and convince All Might to retire now. Nezu supported him, while Gran Torino silently watched on. And when they finally came upon what Night-Eye saw with his foresight, even Night-Eye couldn't stop himself from raising his voice. "Even if you retire, the next number 1 will appear. There may be some commotion in between, but we might be able to avoid your fate." Night-Eye thought, and still thinks to this day, that it was the only reasonable course of action. But All Might had looked at him with a fire burning in his hooded eyes. "And how many people must live in fear in the meantime?" It's the fundamental reason that made Night-Eye and All Might part ways. For all their time together as hero and sidekick, All Might would never bend to Night-Eye's reasoning to see the big picture. Night-Eye just could not understand All Might's insistence, his most obsessive adamance that he had to save everyone possible as soon as possible. But now, the heir that All Might chose comes to him and asks, "But how many tears must Eri spill in the meantime?" And Night-Eye realizes then and there that this must be one of the reasons, perhaps even the reason, that All Might chose Midoriya as his heir. That fundamental drive, that fire that burns your body as fuel, that all-consuming need to save, that which Night-Eye could just not understand in All Might. Midoriya has it too. Izuku and Toga are sent back as the adults process the new information. Both are quiet on the ride home, and they part at school with few words. Later that evening, in his dorm, Izuku calls his mother. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, honey." Inko responds with a bright voice. Izuku lies down on his bed and stares up at his ceiling. You sound happy. Did something good happen? Oh, darling, is it that obvious? Well, Mizuki says she found this adorable new dessert cafe, so we're going to try it out tomorrow. If it's nice, maybe we can go together the next time you come home to celebrate, you getting your provisional hero license especially. Izuku listens to his mother chatter on happily as his thoughts start to drift. Some nights, he's still woken from sleep by the phantom memories of Hizashi's laughs and Inko's screams. It's ridiculous, as it's so far behind them already. Most people don't even remember when they were 3 or 4, or even 5 years old, but it still clings to Izuku like bloodstains on a wall, still haunts him like scars on his back. I'm sorry, Inko had sobbed. I'm so sorry, Izuku. And now Izuku finally understands what he'd done to her that day. He truly understands what he put her through. Inko cheerily chatters on. Izuku listens to her voice until she diminishes herself and asks him a question. Oh, look at me, rambling on like that. Was there a reason you called, honey? And at that question, Izuku dearly wants to blurt out, I'm so sorry. He wants to tell her about Eri. He wants to apologize. He wants to cry. He doesn't. Part of the reason he doesn't is that anything related to the Chizaki is strictly classified. Part of it's because he doesn't quite know how to even begin talking about all this, and part of it's because he doesn't want to remind and hurt his mother all over again. In the end, it's all Izuku can do to force out a white lie through clenched teeth. It's nothing. Just wanted to hear your voice. It's fine, he thinks. He thinks it to himself. Izuku has learned that keeping secrets from his mother, even with the intent of protecting her, isn't always the best course of action. That it isn't healthy for either of them. So maybe when this is all over and when they've saved Eri, maybe then he can tell her. Maybe. Oh, sweetheart. Well, I'll see you later. Love you, darling. Love you too, Mom. That night, Izuku dreams a familiar nightmare. He dreams of Icarus, of a boy who tries so desperately to reach the sun, but he's forgotten that his wings had been strapped onto him by his father, by Daedalus, by Hisashi, and he's burned for having dared fly high with those wings. So Icarus, no, Izuku, no, Icarus, yes, Izuku, falls down, and as he does, he plummets and falls. His wings burn and his eyes water, and wind screams in his ears, and air refuses to let him breathe. And when he turns his head to the side, Izuku finds that he's not the only one who's falling. Eri falls with him, curled up in a ball, eyes scrunched shut, hands over her ears, mouth pressed into a trembling line. He knows that pose. It's the stance of someone who knows the inevitability of pain and is resigned to it, prepared for it. Oh, no. Izuku tries to reach for her, but she's just out of reach. He calls over the screaming wind, and the girl, he tries out to reach her, tries to reach her hand, and Eri doesn't. She doesn't, and Hisashi laughs as both Izuku and Eri fall. And Izuku wakes with a gasp. When class resumes after the weekend, Class 1A is abuzz as Uraraka, Asui, and Kirishima's exploits during their internships hit the news. Izuku grins as he shows Kirishima his phone, which has a saved screenshot of the news with the boy's hero name in it. You're trending. The incident with Fat Gum blew up, which means that you blew up. Kirishima laughs embarrassedly as he tries to bat away the phone that Izuku's shoving into his face. Wait, that wording sounds familiar. Is this revenge for when I teased you about that stain video going viral? Oh my god, Midori, that was months ago. I've been told that revenge is best served cold, Izuku responds flippantly. Look, there are some really appreciative remarks about your topless hero costume in the comments section. Oh my god, stop it! Someone help! The other guys join in the good-natured ribbing and teasing, so Izuku leaves a pink-faced but laughing Kirishima to congratulate Uraraka this time. I didn't know you got an internship with Ryuko. She was one of the top 10 heroes last season, and I've heard that she's a great mentor to interns as well. Izuku cuts himself off when he realizes he's starting to ramble again and just gives Uraraka a sheepish smile. What I meant was congratulations. Thanks, Deku. Uraraka beams back at him, but then her smile falters. Are you okay, Deku? Izuku gives her a puzzled look. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? Uraraka looks like she might say something else, but the bell rings before she can. The girl shoots Izuku a look, but in the end she wordlessly returns to her seat. It doesn't end there, though. Ida asks him if he's all right during lunch, and a few others in Class A also seem to be worried about Izuku by the end of the day. Even Bakugo decides to gruff out a, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" which might as well be a full-blown mother henning from anyone else. He's fine, Izuku tells everyone. He doesn't know why no one seems reassured. Midoriya, what are you doing? Izuku jolts from his wandering thoughts as a panicked voice calls out to him. Huh? He answers reflexively, only to be snared in the now familiar mind control. Shinso releases him from the mind control as soon as he's caught and repeats the question. Again, what are you doing? It looks like he actually wants an answer this time, not just as a way to catch Izuku in mind control, as Izuku looks at him confused before a sting in his palm draws his eyes down to his hand. His left palm is pink with a light first-degree burn. Oh, he says dumbly, and Shinso smacks him in the forehead. Oh? You almost gave me a heart attack. Today is one of their weekly quirk training sessions, but Izuku hadn't been able to concentrate that well, and it seems that while his mind wandered, his fire quirk had started burning him. Shinso, true to his promise to be Izuku's fire extinguisher if Izuku is his guinea pig, had put Izuku under his mind control to cut off the quirk. Sorry, Izuku tries to wave it off, but it looks like Shinso isn't buying it. It's been weeks, months, since you last burned yourself, Shinso points out with narrowed eyes. A few weeks ago, Izuku wouldn't have been able to notice the light of concern in his sharp gaze. What happened? Are you all right? Izuku doesn't know why everyone keeps asking him that. I'm fine, he repeats once again. He really is. He just doesn't know why no one believes him. Todoroki is the only one who doesn't ask questions. Instead, he knocks on Izuku's bedroom at night, and Izuku opens the door. He finds the other boy standing there with a mug of steaming milk in his hand. Todoroki doesn't ask him what's wrong. He doesn't ask if Izuku's all right. He doesn't ask what happened. Try to get some sleep, is all he says as he hands Izuku the mug, as if he knows what the hint of bags starting to form under his eyes means, as if he somehow knows that Izuku spent sleepless nights as familiar yet new nightmares haunt him. Todoroki hesitates as if maybe he might say or do something more, but in the end he just nods at Izuku once and quietly leaves. Izuku stands in his room, feeling a bit lost, holding the mug in his hands. It's warm, and when he tentatively brings the drink to his lips, he finds that Todoroki has put exactly the right amount of honey, just the way Izuku likes it. A lump forms in his throat. He's fine, Izuku thinks, blinking back tears. He really is. Really. The tears eventually spill over a few days later. Izuku prods his bowl of katsudon silently, and he's absent-minded in his thinking during lunch. Ida looks at him for a long moment before putting down his spoon next to his untouched beef stew. Midoriya. Izuku raises his head to find his friend looking at him with a steady gaze, but Ida's next words startle him. I'm going to count on you to tell us when you need us. We'll be there. Izuku's eyes widen as the familiar words are thrown in his face. Ida just smiles at him, and Izuku's eyes catch sight on the light burn scars on Ida's throat that are too faint to notice unless you're looking for them. That is what you told me once when I was caught up in my own head. The sentiment is true for you as well. If you do not wish to speak of it yet, then you don't have to. But you do not have to pretend everything is all right. We are here for you, and we're here if and when you need us. And at that, Izuku is speechless. Todoroki bumps his shoulder lightly against Izuku's, and Uraraka nods in agreement. Oh, Izuku thinks. No matter what he's been telling them, what he's been telling himself, his friends already knew that something had happened, and they respect and trust him enough to keep his silence for as long as he needs to. Tears creep up at the corner of Izuku's eyes. He's so blessed to have these people here for him. And the thing is, he really is fine. That's just the problem, isn't it? Izuku is fine, but Eri isn't. Izuku sniffles and swipes his arm across his eyes. All might pointed out his tendency to cry too easily, albeit fondly, so he really should get a better handle on his tear glands, and besides, he can't go save Eri with a crying face. Thanks, Ida, but I'm really okay. Heroes don't cry. No, heroes cry too, probably. Todoroki objects even as he pats Izuku's back soothingly. Here, drink some water. For once, Izuku doesn't complain that Todoroki is going to spoil him rotten, just accepts the drink with thanks. His friends have already found out that he has something on his mind, so instead of pretending to be chipper, he might as well just eat up and prepare as much as he can. Would you like some of my beef stew? Ida offers after Izuku has finished drinking from Todoroki's cup. Yeah. Oh, then have some of my mochi, too. Thanks. But then it kind of spirals from there. Their classmates that were sitting near them seem to have heard the tail end of the conversation and start flocking to Izuku. Oh, is it Feed Midoriya Day? Then here, take this sandwich. Huh? Thanks. And this taco. Thank you. Here, you gotta try this Jell-O. Okay. Someone pass him the kimchi? Quick, eat this too. I stole it from... Hey, give that back. Wait, I can't eat all this. Class 1A laughs at the small mountain of food in front of Izuku, and Izuku laughs with them. The dark cloud weighing on his heart temporarily lifted. Being used to something is a frightening thing. If you get too used to something bad, you might just give up and never try to get away from it. If you get too used to something good, though, it will hurt that much more when it gets taken away from you. Being used to something is a frightening, terrifying thing, but Izuku thinks as he laughs and smiles with his friends that it's worth it. This is worth it. He hopes Eri will learn this too. But life isn't fair, and it certainly isn't kind, and so a few days later, Izuku, Kirishima, Uraraka Asui, and the Big Three are all called to a large-scale hero meeting. There they are told about the investigation on the Shia Hisaikai. There they are told about the ties of the organization to quirk-destroying drugs. There they are told that Eri might be the ingredient. Their worlds shatter. After the meeting, the students of UA gathered together in one of the spare meeting rooms as Toga and Izuku explained how they met Eri and let her go. Silence curls around their feet, and no one really knows what to say. Uraraka and Kirishima and Asui finally understand why Izuku had been so off the past few days. Uraraka and Kirishima doubly so, as they know a bit about his past and how he must empathize with the girl. Amajiki and Hato had never seen Togeda like this. Togeda is absolutely devastated, and it makes Amajiki nervous too. Eventually, it's Togeda who breaks the silence. Midoriya. Togeda looks up, and he sees Midoriya looking back at him. He bows his head. I'm so sorry, he says to Izuku. Togeda recalls what one of the heroes had said during the meeting. So if your interns had just rescued the girl when they found her, there wouldn't be a problem in the first place, right? And it's true, Togeda thinks. Midoriya wanted to. Tried to, but it was Togeda that stopped him. Togeda that let the girl walk back to her personal hell. Togeda chokes on despair and swallows down his tears. I'm so sorry. And Izuku realizes that Togeda isn't just apologizing to him. He's also apologizing to Eri. Izuku looks at his senior for a moment. Togeda's back is hunched and his head is hanging as if he's physically weighing down by his despair and regret at having stopped Izuku. Neither of them was wrong or right. Izuku knows this. It's more of a difference of opinion than anything else. A difference in experience. No matter if he's a senior or one of the Big Three, Togeda is still a student, an intern, a child that's used to looking up to adults for guidance. It's only natural for him to have deferred to Sir Nighteye, but Izuku has grown up without any adults to rely on, learnt that he had to make all of his calls on his own judgment, had to react instantly without having the luxury to step back and plan, and so he wanted to act on the spot, to save Eri as soon as he could. It's a difference in opinion, in experience, in reaction, in their fundamental belief. It's a difference that drove All Might and Sir Nighteye apart in the end. And the thing is, neither is right or wrong. Maybe they could have saved Eri if Izuku had trusted his instincts. Maybe they could have escaped if he'd just taken Eri and run. Maybe then the Shia Hisaikai wouldn't have been able to make more drugs. Maybe Eri would be safe. Or maybe Chizaki wouldn't have let her go without a fight. Maybe the girl would be too important for him to risk losing. Maybe Izuku and Togeda would be dead for their rushed and unplanned actions. Maybe they would have gotten innocent bystanders hurt as well. Maybe then Eri would have been more hurt and traumatized and worse off than she already is. It's impossible to tell. Izuku wanted to protect Eri on the spot, and Togeda tried to raise the odds by waiting and planning. They both wanted to save her. They both couldn't. I can't tell you that it's okay, Izuku finally says quietly. He won't patronize Togeda or belittle Eri's pain by lying. But I can tell you that it's not your fault. Togeda lifts his head. He sees no judgment or blame in Izuku's eyes. You didn't do anything wrong. You were trying to protect her too, so... Izuku holds out a fist. This time, let's save her. Togeda sniffles. He wipes away his tears, and then he raises his own fist and bumps it against Izuku's. Soon another fist joins in and bumps theirs, Izuku looks up to find Kirishima grinning a toothy smile. Following his lead, Uraraka, Asui, Amajiki, and Hado all join in as well. Huh, comes a slightly surprised voice, and they all turn to find Aizawa stepping inside. Aizawa-sensei. Aizawa eyes their gathered fists. I was worried that you guys might be down after hearing all that, but I guess you're all right. Yeah, this is our let's definitely save Eri group fist bump, Kirishima nods vigorously. The corner of Aizawa's lips twitches as he approaches them. Well then. Aizawa's fist lands lightly on top of their pile. The meaning of the simple gesture is clear. Let's save Eri together. Class 1A beams at their teacher's participation in the fist bump. Oh, and Midoriya. Yes, Sensei? Don't worry too much about calling me Sensei. You can all call me Eraserhead outside of school. So that's why Midoriya's been so down lately. Ida mumbles, eyes downcast, and his shoulders are drooped. Bakugo doesn't say anything, but Shoto's eyes catch the way his fists are clenched tight. However dysfunctional their relationship may be, Bakugo Katsuki is still Midoriya Izuku's childhood friend, after all, and Shoto doesn't know how much history they actually share, but judging by Bakugo's reactions, the truth of Midoriya's past seems to be as new to him as it is to the rest of them. After coming back from the debriefing, Uraraka and Kirishima had told Bakugo, Ida, and Shoto a little bit about the situation. Not anything concrete, since it's all classified, but they did let the three know that Izuku had to watch a girl who'd been abused return to her abuser without being able to save her. The 5 of them were the only ones in Class 1A who were there for Shigaraki's video call while Midoriya was kidnapped. In other words, they're the only ones in class who know just how difficult and just how personal it must have been for Midoriya to watch that. Shoto rubs the back of his neck. It makes sense now, why Midoriya had been so off and why he couldn't say anything. He's glad more than ever that he trusted Midoriya to talk to him if and when he needed to and hadn't asked questions. Midoriya wouldn't have been able to say much, what with the tight lock on the classified information, and Shoto doesn't want to back Midoriya into a corner by pressing for answers he can't give. The 5 of them are silent for a long moment as they think of what Midoriya must be going through. Both me and Kirishima will be going on the mission with him, so we'll keep an eye on him, Uraraka promises eventually. But before anyone else can respond to it, Bakugo scoffs. What the fuck? Deku doesn't need you losers looking after him. He'll be fine. And a few weeks ago they might have bristled at the sharp words and seemingly dismissive attitude, but thanks to Midoriya, they, or at least Uraraka and Kirishima, have become better at translating what some of Class 1A has dubbed Bakugo speech. They know that what Bakugo really means is that Midoriya is strong enough to overcome this on his own. That it means Bakugo believes in the strength of his childhood friend. That in truth, Bakugo has faith in Midoriya. Kirishima's lips spread into a toothy grin. You're right, Midoriya is one of the manliest guys I know. He'll be fine even without us, but we'll still support him. Bakugo just gives a shrug at Kirishima's thumbs up, but he doesn't say anything else. Ida seems torn between wanting to thank Uraraka and Kirishima for letting them know, and also scolding them for vaguely even leaking any confidential information. Shoto wishes fiercely that he didn't fail his provisional license exam, so that he could stand next to Midoriya instead of having to be left behind and in the dark. But it's too late for regret, so Shoto unclenches his fist and his hands and resolves to do what he can. Later that night, Shoto goes to the kitchen with the intent of making another cup of milk for Midoriya. He understands now why the other boy has been losing sleep, but he still hopes to ease the strain however much or little he can. It's the least he can do, seeing as he can't go with Midoriya. But when he enters the kitchen, he finds that someone else is already there. Midoriya? The boy turns around at Shoto's voice. Oh, hey, Todoroki. Shoto feels his lips curve and his eyes soften on reflex at Midoriya's bright greeting. What are you doing here? Just as he asks, he sees that Midoriya has a carton of milk, honey, and a mug on the counter. Midoriya scratches his cheek with a sheepish grin. Well, you're always looking after me, so I thought I'd return the favor and surprise you this time, but it seems I was a bit too late, he says, and Shoto takes another look at the counter. Oh, 2 mugs. A flash of warmth swirls in Shoto's stomach as if already downing a glass of warm milk. He feels his smile widen even more than he'd ever have thought possible just a few months ago. It's not too late, Shoto denies, but Midoriya gives him a look and, is that a pout? I wanted it to be a surprise, Midoriya grouses, but soon smiles easily and offers Shoto a steaming mug. Join me? Of course. It's just like Midoriya to try to look after Shoto even while he himself is under so much strain. It makes a wave of affection and exasperation rush over Shoto, especially after hearing what had happened from Uraraka and Kirishima. Shoto brings the mug to his lips to hide a smile. Bakugo is right. Midoriya will be just fine. But Eri isn't. The girl trembles as yet another babysitter is unmade in front of her eyes. A splatter of blood lands at her feet, and the girl scrambles to scoot further away, but it's too late. Blood stains her bandages and seeps across the fabric as if a hand is wrapping around her ankle. Your fault, the creeping bloodstain whispers. Your fault. I'm sorry, she wants to sob, but Eri keeps her lips pressed tight with practiced familiarity. This is not the first time, after all. Not the first time someone was disassembled because of her. Not the first time she was a bad girl, not the first time it was her fault. It's always her fault. Chizaki lets out a long breath. His hands lower slowly before his eyes drift to Eri. Eri. She flinches at her name as if he'd slapped her. Not that he ever has. Chizaki only ever touches her to unmake and remake her, but his cold gaze makes her tremble. I get the last time, Chizaki says almost conversationally as he pulls his glove back on one hand even as he leaves the other still bare. A reminder, a threat. The fool watching you took his eyes off you while you were outside. It was all but an invitation for you to try to run. Not that it ever would have been successful. Chizaki himself had gone after Eri within moments of her ridiculously lucky escape. Few things rate high enough for the young boss of the Shihisaikai to take into his own hands, but Eri counts as one of them. But this time it wasn't exactly like that. You weren't just presented with an opportunity, you actively tried to make one, actively tried to escape. This is the first time. Why? Eri trembles as Chisaki's eyes bore into her, but her mouth remains firmly closed. Even so, Chizaki somehow seems to read something from her silence. He cocks his head at her as if evaluating her, studying her. What was different this time? He muses, dispassionate and detached as if merely a speck on a petri dish. Or is the question, who? Eri can't help but tense. It's enough of a giveaway for Chizaki to connect all the dots. Oh no. That hero in training you met before you and you escaped. He's why you tried to escape, because of him. Chizaki deduces in a flat voice, and Eri feels despair creeping up her entire body. Chisaki's going to hurt that person because of Eri, just because she wanted to see him again. It's her fault, again. I'm sorry. Eri sobs in her head again as if her well-trained body keeps silent. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. That won't do. Chisaki clicks his tongue irritably. There's too much at risk already to deal with your disobedience. And with that the man reaches out his bare hand. Punishment. Eri knows that there's no use in trying to run or scream, but she can't help her instinct to scrunch her eyes shut and raise her arms in a helpless defense against the pain that never comes. Eri tentatively cracks open an eye. Chizaki had taken cold eyes off of her and is staring up at the ceiling. Muffled noises are coming through as if people are running and shouting upstairs. They're here. Chizaki narrows his eyes. He withdraws his hand from Eri, but the girl doesn't dare breathe yet. Chrono, Chizaki calls while he motions to Eri. Chrono steps forward, towards Eri at the order, and again, Eri knows better than to run. So she only meekly curls into herself as she is picked up and carried like cargo, as the two men set off through the underground passageway. It's not long before they're interrupted. I'm sorry, but I'd like a word. The person pants, breath heavy from running and cape billowing at his back. Eri recognizes him as the other hero who was with that person. You, Chisaki's brows crease almost imperceptibly, also recognizing the person as well. Not turning a blind eye this time. The person flinches as if he'd been struck, but he grits his teeth and charges. Chisaki's henchmen gang up on him, but the person easily evades and then takes Eri from Chrono's grasp. Why? She can't help but speak up for the first time. You can't. He'll murder you. You too, and it'll be because of me. Her fault, her fault, her fault. Come back, Eri, Chisaki tells her as if he reads her mind. Or he'll be murdered too. How many times must I tell you? And his words wrap around Eri's limbs and creep around her heart. You destroy people. That's how you were born. Every move you make kills people. Your very existence is cursed. Your fault, your fault, Your fault. Eri knows. She knows, so she tries to push away and run back to Chizaki, just like she did for that person. But unlike when he watched her leave last time, this person embraces her in a hold that's infinitely warmer than when Chrono held her. It's all right, he tells her. I will be your hero, he declares. Lemillion, he says his name is. He wraps his cape around Eri. He punches Chizaki in the face. He doesn't let anyone come near her. He's so overwhelmingly strong. Tentative hope blossoms like a flower peeking out of a drift of snow to raise and face the sun, but then it withers to dust. Eri watches as Lemillion takes the shot aimed at her. She watches as her own blood destroys his quirk. She watches as he still stands to defend her, even quirkless and wounded. Eri hadn't cried even when she was hurt, but tears spill over as blood flows down his body. Her fault. They sing as tears and blood splatter on the ground. Her fault. Her fault. Her fault. I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Deku, Uraraka had said when she and Ryuku's office held back the goons at the front gate to let the others pass. Midoriya, go! Kirishima had shouted when he and Fat Gum pushed Izuku and Aizawa out of the way and got separated from the group instead. Izuku isn't dumb. On the contrary, his analytic skills are one of the few things he readily prides himself on. He knows why they singled him out, why they wanted him specifically to go forward out of all the other interns, police, and even pro-heroes. They know his past and connection to Eri. They know just how desperate he is. They know just how personal this is. Izuku's never wished for his friends to know about his past, never wanted to burden them with baggage like that, but he will forever be grateful for their understanding and support. Izuku knows that having people who care for you isn't something that you should take for granted in life, and he cherishes it with all he has. He hopes that Eri will come to know what that feels like, too. He'll make sure that she learns what it feels like. With Ryuku's office holding the front gates, Togata running off ahead, and Amajiki, Kirishima, and Fat Gum staying behind to hold off other members, the only ones left in the group are Izuku, Aizawa, Sir Nighteye, Rocklock, and some of the police officers. The walls around them shift, and the police call out a warning. Watch out! Iranaka must be here again! While Izuku has already fought villains before on multiple occasions, this is the first time he's been an official mission attendant. One of the things that he appreciates the most is the extensive intel gathering and support from various heroes and police. Just knowing what kind of quirk his opponent has is a huge advantage. So when Iranaka warps the walls and floor again, Izuku's ready. He makes sure his repaired mask is firmly over his mouth and pulls the first person he sees so that they're not separated by themselves. The person turns out to be Sir Nighteye, who twists his body with surprising agility so that he slides across the floor to stand by Izuku's side. The walls slam shut around them, sectioning them off from the other heroes. Nighteye looks around them while Izuku pushes out the recoil of his pull. He breathes out fire into the mask to negate the black backlash of it, and Hatsumi had reassured him that the mask was more fire and heat-resistant than ever, and true to her words, he feels the flames flicker against his lips as they curl back from the mask. He coughs out some of the stray flames as Nighteye raps his knuckles on a wall. The walls aren't that thick, I can still hear the others, but then what is the point of trying to separate us now? The hero muses, brows furrowed and eyes narrowed. I'm not sure, Izuku responds. Maybe they're getting desperate. Either way, I can break the walls. The sound of yelling and gunfire pierces the air. Izuku doesn't even bother finishing his question and just charges at the wall the sound came from, full cowl flickering with electricity in his veins as he kicks the wall down to find the police, fighting against a hulking man with a plague mask and... Twice? Izuku sputters. The villain turns at Izuku's voice. Huh? Why are you here? Who are you again? His characteristic conflicting speech aside, the villain soon flings his hands up in a dramatic pose and shouts to the Yakuza beside him. Whatever. Go get him, Rappa bro. The large man leaps towards the police with them, and he lets out a roar. The police have their guns out, but the man is too fast. Fortunately, Izuku's quirk doesn't need to be as precise as bullets. He pulls at the man and manages to change his course. The man misses the police and skids across the floor. Izuku breathes fire into his mask, not willing to risk pushing out fire in a confined space with this many people, and Sir Nighteye seemingly takes over as he flicks a support weapon in the shape of a seal at Rappa. Izuku's about to continue and assist Nighteye when he catches movement from the side. From everything Izuku had seen during his time with the League, Twice is a physical fighter. If he even fights at all. That is, but now he's holding up a gun, and it's pointed straight at Sir Nighteye. Sir! Izuku can only pull one thing at a time. If he lets go of Rappa, the man could continue to target the police, but if he doesn't do anything, then Nighteye will get shot. There's only one thing he can do. He steps between them. Bam! Midoriya! Sir Nighteye calls out his name in alarm. I'm okay, Izuku shouts back, and he really is. Maybe the bullet only grazed him, but what matters right now is that he's still in fighting condition, so with Rappa already subdued by Nighteye and melting down, another clone, Izuku thrusts out a hand towards Twice and pushes. But nothing happens. What? Izuku stares down at his hand in disbelief. Then a thought enters his mind like a strike of lightning as he casts his eyes around wildly, looking for the bullet that hit him. There, rolling on the floor, is the husk of the bullet that must have hit him, and it looks exactly like the quirk-destroying bullets they'd seen at the debriefing. Oh. Uh-oh. Twice scratches the back of his head. I was aiming for the salary man, but, well, sadly we were only allowed to play with the unfinished products, so unfortunately your quirk's going to come back in a few days. Don't worry. Izuku just stares at the casual thumbs up that Twice is giving him. Because you see, no matter how much he's grown in the past months, no matter if Todoroki helped him see that it's his power, Izuku spent most of his life thinking that half his quirk was stained by his father. For so much of his life, Izuku had desperately wished that he didn't have his father's quirk. He never thought he'd get his wish like this. But wait, is this actually great? Twice keeps on blathering, perking up his previously sheepish demeanor. If you can't use your quirk, then it'll be easier to... That's as far as he gets before he barely dodges the kick to his face. Twice yelps as he scrambles back. Even the mask over his face can't hide the way his mouth is gaping at the sight of Izuku crackling with full cowl. What? How? What the... Damn it, you useless Yakuza! You can't even make a proper drug! Iranaka slams into another wall to section Twice off from the heroes, but the villain's wailing complaints can still be heard for a while. Midoriya. Sir Nighteye approaches Izuku with sharp eyes. Your condition? He asks without beating around the bush. Izuku looks down at his hand. He tries to push out a bit of fire, but it won't happen. The drug worked, he bites out, still conflicted on how to feel. Sure, he's now accepted that it's his power, but... He tries to shake it off and focus on the current situation. I can still use... He makes sure that the police can't hear him and lowers his voice. I can still use One for All, though. All might mention that it's a quirk that can be forcefully given but not forcefully taken, so maybe that's why. Nighteye inclines his head. Whatever the reason, what matters now is whether you can still fight. The hero looks straight at him. Can you? Izuku straightens up. Yes, sir. Nighteye looks at him for a moment more, and Izuku fears that he'll be sent away, that he won't be able to help, that he won't get the chance to save Eri again, but the hero soon nods. All right, then. We'll tell the others that the drug seems to be faulty and only partially erased your quirk. Izuku breathes out a breath of relief. Sir Nighteye, he calls before the hero turns away from him. There's something Twice said that bothers me. When he shot the drug at me, he said that he was only allowed to use the unfinished version so my quirk would heal in a few days, but then... Night-Eye's eyes are wide behind his glasses as he too catches on to what Izuku is saying. Does that imply that there's a finalized version that completely erases the quirks? Sensei! Aizawa turns at Midoriya's voice to see the boy stepping out from behind a crumpled wall. Thank goodness I found you, the boy breathes a sigh of relief. Sir Nighteye and the others are nearby, but you were the only one we couldn't find. Are you all right? Yeah, Aizawa replies after a beat. And you? The boy hesitates. Twice is here, and I'm sorry, I messed up, but he shot me with that drug that erases quirks. His green eyes stand out in stark contrast against how his face is paled in the dim light. Sir Nighteye keeps telling me to fall back, but... Aizawa blinks slowly, then approaches him. It's too dangerous for you to go back on your own. I'll escort you there. Really? The boy's face brightens. Then thanks for... What? Midoriya scrambles back as he just barely dodges the capture weapon that Aizawa flings at him, as soon as he approached close enough. I thought you were going to escort me, Sensei, the boy calls in mild panic. I will, Aizawa retorts with gritted teeth. To prison. At that, Midoriya clicks his tongue. His expression distorts into an irritated pout that looks so out of place on Midoriya's face. It's no fun. How come you can tell every time? Midoriya complains. Or rather... Toga Himiko. Because you see, ever since Aizawa told Midoriya that he could call him by his hero name, The boy had done so almost giddily. Not once had Midoriya called Aizawa anything but Eraserhead while they were on this mission. While Aizawa allowed Midoriya to call him by his hero name, partly to help put the boy at ease, part of it was also as a precaution. Even if they knew that Aizawa is the one who arrested Salamander all those years ago, no one in the League knows about Midoriya's more personal attachment, or hero worship, or awe, or reverence. Not that Aizawa would ever admit those words himself, but that's how he feels towards Eraserhead, so no one would think of this little detail. It's not fail-proof, not by a long shot, but it's enough to give them an edge when facing Toga's deception. Aizawa's eyes flash red, and Midoriya's gaze melts off Toga's Himiko. The stunt is getting old fast, and he never wants to see the villain casually walking around in his problem child's face ever again. He throws his capture weapon around her, but she uses the hold that he has on her to dash closer instead, her hand brandishing a knife. Aizawa dodges the knife, or so he thought, until the girl flips over his head and shoves it into his shoulder. Aizawa bites back a grunt as he pivots around to face the girl again. His abrupt motion has shaken her off, the knife still clattering to the ground between them with a splatter of blood. "Uh-oh," Toga laments as the blade is dropped, reaching out for it to spite herself, and only barely jumps out of the way from Aizawa's capture weapon. The walls move to slam shut around her, protecting her, and Aizawa grits his teeth at the proof that the League was working together with the Yakuza. As much as he wants to put Toga behind bars, it'd be no use chasing after her when Iranaka is protecting her, especially when he's been wounded, and Aizawa stoops to pick up the bloodied knife. Toga had acted as if she was upset that she wasn't able to retrieve the weapon that had been coated with his blood, and judging from the fact that she came to him during the provisional license exam, someone breaks through the wall with a smash before he can finish his thought. "Eraserhead!" A panicked voice calls out. "I'm here, Midoriya." Aizawa responds immediately. Midoriya and Nighteye emerge from the other room. Aizawa spots the police sporting a injured Rocklock from behind the broken wall before Midoriya rushes up to him. "You're bleeding. What happened? Are you all right? Aizawa plops a hand on top of Midoriya's head, and the boy stills immediately. "I'm fine," he sighs, "but Toga Himiko is here, and it looks like she's working with the Yakuza." Nighteye nods. "Twice was here as well. He ran off as soon as he lost the advantage, though, so we don't know what they're after." "I might have an answer to that." Aizawa holds up the knife. "I think they're after my blood." Midoriya pales at Aizawa's words. "The license exam," he puts together quickly. "We thought she might have come because of me, but they must have been after you even then. But why?" "That's the real question, isn't it?" "We can worry about that later." Aizawa shakes his head after a moment. "Right now, the most important thing is rescuing Eri, though we should be careful that we're not fooled by Toga. Be wary. She even claimed that she got shot by the quirk-erasing drug to cover for the fact that she can't use the quirk of the person she turns into." At his words, Nighteye looks over at Midoriya. Aizawa's brow ticks. Midoriya meekly holds one hand up as if he's in class or something. I actually did get hit by the drug." Aizawa stares. "Prove that you're really Midoriya." Because while Midoriya calling him sensei while in uniform is a sure sign that he's fake, just because he did call him Eraserhead doesn't guarantee he's real. Midoriya blinks at the sudden request, his fingers pulling on his mask. They're lowered now to rest on his collar, and he starts mumbling to himself on what can prove his identity. At this point, he's either the real thing or a very convincing actor. Aizawa was just about to say he's seen enough when Midoriya perks up with a bright expression. "Oh, here's something Toga wouldn't know. I carried you back to school bridal style after the practice exam last semester." A half-cough, half-choking noise sounds from among the police. Nighteye just raises one unimpressed eyebrow. If Aizawa had been drinking, he would have spat it out. Really? It had to be that? Despite the dire situation, Aizawa groans as he's reminded of the incident again. Yamada had been hysterical. There had been pictures. So many pictures. "All right," he sighs. "If you really don't have a quirk, then you're going to have to either go back or stay with the police." And where Midoriya is impersonated by Toga had been all too ready to leave, probably as a plot to lure Aizawa further away from the heroes, the real Midoriya balks at his eyes start to widen with alarm. "What? No! My quirk was only partially erased. Eraserhead, please, I can still fight. I have to." While Aizawa understands Midoriya's desperation, he won't gamble with his problem child's life. But before he can order the boy back, someone else interjects, and it's none other than Nighteye himself. "He's right. Hiro nods. Rocklock was too heavily injured by some clone of Rappa to keep going. With him down, you and I are the only heroes left, not to mention that you're injured. The police say they're going after the League, so we need Midoriya with us. Aizawa feels ready to snap. What are you saying? He almost snarls. We can't just lead him into danger when he's helpless. But despite how he initially thought that Nighteye might agree on sending Midoriya back, he's unmoving in his stance. It would be greater risk for him to try to go back after the League with the police, or even try to go back alone. It would be better for him to stay with us, where we can keep an eye on him, and besides, he's far from helpless. After all, Sir Nighteye knows better than most just how powerful One For All is. Even if Midoriya can't use it to the extent of All Might, he's far from helpless. And as much as Aizawa is desperate to protect his student, Nighteye is just as desperate to protect his. If Midoriya is right and there's finished product of the drug, then Mirio is in grave danger. Mirio needs all the help possible, and Nighteye won't refuse any volunteers, even if it's a student intern, even if it's someone he wants to hate. Some part of Aizawa acknowledges the logic in Night-Eye's reasoning, but he's still about to argue when another voice quietly calls him. Eraserhead. Midoriya is looking up at him with calm green eyes. He isn't being reckless. He isn't being emotional, and that's what halts the worry on the tip of Aizawa's tongue. I understand your lesson now, Midoriya says quietly. I thought I knew what you meant when you said you have to save yourself first if you want to save others. And now I understand. Midoriya looks up at him imploringly. I promise I'll be careful, but you need me. Eri needs me, so please, Eraserhead, let me fight with you. Aizawa closes his eyes for a brief moment. When he reopens them, he does so with hard eyes and a closed hand. Promise, he says gruffly as he holds Midoriya to his words, and the boy smiles gratefully at him as he raises his own fist to give Aizawa's waiting hand a fist bump. It means the same thing as before. Let's definitely save Eri together. But by the time they've dealt with Iranaka and finally caught up to Chizaki, Night-Eye's worst fears are sprawled out in front of them. Mirio stands, just barely, teetering in exhaustion and pain. He's bloody and battered and almost broken, but he's still holding between Eri and everything that wants to harm her. Night-Eye's heart lurches and his hands tremble at the sight. He lets Midoriya and Aizawa distract Chizaki as he runs up to Mirio and Eri. Behind me, Mirio gasps. Even in his state, his first concern is the girl behind him. Night-Eye could have said a number of things in response. He could have apologized for sending a mere student intern alone to face the boss of the Yakuza. He could have mourned that he couldn't come sooner. He could have wept for his student's wounds. But he doesn't. Night-Eye may have acted purposefully cold and brusque towards Midoriya, but at heart he's a caring, loving, good mentor. So instead of retracting the faith he'd given by saying Mirio shouldn't have come, instead of soiling Eri's rescue by lamenting Mirio's pain, instead of tarnishing Mirio's efforts by making it something that needs to be apologized for, Night-Eye pulls the boy, his student, into a gentle embrace. Incredible, he praises as he swallows his tears. Night-Eye's seen the 3 other members of the Yakuza besides Chizaki that Mirio must have taken down alone, to come so far. You are incredible, Mirio. And Mirio's knees buckle in relief at his mentor's words, and he had told himself that he had to hold on so strong for so long, but here in his mentor's arms he can finally rest for even a moment. Midoriya, Night-Eye calls, take Mirio and Eri to safety. Izuku disengages Chizaki and comes running, sparking with full cowl at Night-Eye's call. Eraserhead is down, he reports, eyes blown wide and his heart is pumping. He's not wounded, but he's been slowed down by the villain's quirk. I'll handle it, Night-Eye nods. Just take them and go. Izuku does. Eri, Togata-senpai, hold on for a bit more, Izuku pleads, knowing how cruel his request is. Mirio had already held on far past his limit, but he needs to hold on just a little bit longer. Izuku smashes through the wall that covered the entrance they came from. He thanks whatever higher forces there are that it had been his original quirk that was erased and not One For All. Fighting without his full quirk feels like he has one hand tied behind his back, like he's constantly overreaching, but at the very least One For All lets him hold both Eri and Mirio and open the path for them. He picks both Eri and Mirio's significantly larger bulk forms up with ease, setting them down as gently as he can on the other side of the demolished wall. But before he pulls away, Eri tightens the hold she has on his uniform. You've done enough, she says in a whisper that's nearly a sob. I'm so sorry. And oh, Eri. A lump forms in Izuku's throat. No one should ever need to apologize for being saved, especially not a child. There are so many things that Izuku wants to say, so many things he wants to tell her, but there simply isn't enough time right now. As much as he wants to hold her and never let go, lives are at stake, so Izuku forces himself to let go of her and turns to Mirio. "This is the way out," he tells Mirio as he points to the corridor they came from. I know Sir Nighteye told me to take you to safety, but Eraserhead is down and I'm worried about Sir facing Chizaki alone, so—" "Go," Mirio gasps, stopping his babbling, understanding where Izuku's going with this. "Go help Sir." Izuku nods. He lights up with full cowl again and vanishes through the hole. Mirio is left with Eri again. He forces his shaking limbs to move, taking her hand and leading her, one excruciating step after the other. But he can't keep it up for long. Mirio had already pushed past his limit, further and beyond. He had already desperately kept standing for Eri's sake, but now that he's seen the other heroes arrive, relief and exhaustion makes his knees shake and buckle. Mirio finally collapses to the floor, gasping for breath, cold sweat and tears rolling down his face. He can't do this anymore. "Eri, go hide. Wait for reinforcements. Dozens of people are here just to rescue you." But Eri just stands there silently, watching her self-proclaimed hero coming apart at the seams with far too familiar eyes. "Eri, you'll be all right," Mirio pants. "You will be all right." But those words fail to comfort Eri like Mirio probably wanted, because that has never been what Eri wanted to hear, and at that moment, a familiar voice in the darkness behind her eyelids rings loudly through the ruins. "Another person will die because of you." Chisaki's voice pierces through the air at Eri's heart. "Is that what you want, Eri?" No, it isn't. So Eri lets go of Mirio's hand and willingly runs back to Chisaki. "I don't want that," she calls out desperately as she exposes herself, and, oh. When she returns to the room, she sees the blood splattered everywhere. Aizawa has been whisked away when Chisaki fused himself with his subordinate and reassembled the room, but Sir Nighteye is a bloody mess on the floor, with Izuku standing between him and Chisaki, not much better off himself. "Eri!" Izuku breathes. The note of voice is a lamentation, a plea, because he knows exactly why she came back. He understands why she did, and his heart breaks for her. Nighteye, pierced with spikes and on the verge of losing consciousness, hears the panic in Izuku's voice and sees that Mirio isn't with her. He usually tries to avoid seeing others' futures, but in this desperate moment he needs something to cling to. He needs assurance that Mirio is fine, that Izuku won't die trying to protect him, that Eri will be saved. He prays for a hopeful future, and he sees, and... oh. Life isn't fair, and it certainly isn't kind. Nighteye closes his eyes. "You've only made it worse," Chisaki tells Izuku. "I admit, Lemillion was stronger than me, but because he stood his ground and delayed me, now all of you will die. It's the same for you. With your speed, you could have escaped, but because you tried to protect Nighteye, you will die. And as for Eri..." Chisaki's cold eyes bore into the small girl as he addresses her. "Do you think he'll be able to somehow win this situation alone?" Eri trembles under the weight of his gaze. "I don't." "Then what should you do?" "I'll go back to you," Eri whispers, like someone who's too used to despair and resignation. "So instead, please fix them?" "Very good." Chisaki praises hollowly as if he's talking not to a human being but a well-trained dog. "But this has all been far too much of a hassle. You're going to have to learn your lesson." And before Izuku's tired and distracted body can react, Chisaki is on him, raising a hand to clutch his throat. "3 times, Eri," Chisaki hisses as Izuku chokes and claws at his arm. "You defied me 3 times. Once when you tried to escape with this boy, the second time when you tried to go and find him earlier today, and the 3rd time just now when you left with Lemillion. So as punishment, you will watch him die 3 times. "No, please! I'm sorry! No!" Eri screams as Chisaki activates his quirk. And Izuku is unmade. Again and again. Izuku is familiar with violence. He's known it before he even learned to write his own name, before he even learned right from wrong. But this is the first time he's faced with torture. There's barely enough time for thought between every time that Chisaki disassembles and reassembles him, let alone enough time to scream. He's killed and revived thrice in the span of moments, reduced to puddles and scraped together again, too quick to stop, too powerful to escape. The sound of Eri's wails mix in with the memory of Inko's screams and Hizashi's laughs and croons in his ears, and he's dead and killed and murdered. When Chizaki finally releases Izuku, he's dropped to the floor in a trembling mess. Eri runs up to him with tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she sobs as she clings to him. "I'm so sorry." Her fault, her fault, her fault. Chizaki looks down on them with disinterest. "I've reassembled him, so he's physically fine, just like you asked, but his body has gone through so much pain and trauma in a short span of time that he won't be able to move or even think straight," he informs Eri. The girl only cries, clutching Izuku's still form. Normally, Chizaki would have been right. All the people he's done this to in the past had been misfunctioning messes by the time Chizaki was through with them. But if there's something Chizaki miscalculated, it's that Izuku isn't normal. He's used to bearing pain, good at it even. It's one of the few lessons Hizashi ever taught him. Izuku has always been a fast learner. Lulled by his knowledge that Izuku shouldn't be able to move, Chizaki is taken completely off guard when Izuku bursts into action. Being reassembled had hurt, but it had also healed all of Izuku's wounds and returned his strength. Izuku's hand shoots out and grasps at Chizaki's collar. The man is caught completely unaware as Izuku charges up with one for all and delivers a punch straight to his face. The villain is sent flying across the room with a crash, but Izuku doesn't linger on him long. Instead, he turns immediately to Eri and hugs her tight. "I'm so sorry," she starts to say, but Izuku cuts her off before she can finish. "I'm so sorry" is exactly what he wants to say. He wants to say, "I'm so sorry you had to see that." He wants to tell her, "I'm so sorry I made you feel like you had to protect me. I'm so sorry I made you cry for me." But Izuku knows better than anyone how much those words can hurt, how they aren't what Eri needs to hear, so he doesn't say them. "Thank you," he breathes instead, and he feels a surprised jolt go through Eri's small body, as if she never expected to hear words of gratitude, as if she's never been thanked before. "You were so brave," he praises. "Thanks to you, I'm all right. You saved me. Now let me save you." And at that word, fresh tears will well up in Eri's eyes. "You'll be all right," Mirio had said, with an implied "even if I'm not," and Eri had let go of his hand because that had never been what she wanted. "But thank you," Izuku had said instead. "You saved me. Now let me save you." "We'll be all right," he's promising, not just Eri, but both of them. All of them. Being used to something is a frightening thing. Eri was too used to Chizaki, to pain, to despair, to resignation, for her to dare to hope that the heroes could win. She was too used to being faulted for death, to stand by and watch. Most of all, she was too kind to accept Mirio's sacrifice. But Izuku assured Eri that he was all right, that she saved him, and that if she lets him save her, that they will be all right. That is what finally makes Eri lift her arms to tentatively wrap them around Izuku's neck and hug him back. That is what finally gives her the resolve to be saved. "You saved me," her hero had said. "Now let me save you." "Okay," she whispers. This concludes Chapter 19 of Burn Your Wings. Only a few chapters left in this one. Hope you guys are still enjoying it, and as always, thank you all so much for listening.